Hey folks, my name is Rajiv Doreswamy and I'm the host of The Rajiv Show. Check out The Rajiv Show at The Rajiv Show both on Facebook and Instagram, and new episodes will be released every Wednesdays. Cheers folks, and stay safe.
Hi, my name is Mark Adam and I'm the host of Quantox the Podcast, a podcast show that we can discuss different hot trending topics from love, social media, politics, and many more. May pagkulitan makipagkwentuhan lang dito sa Quantox the Podcast. See you there!
For more local podcasts, check out more shows from Pilipinas Indie Podcast and Entertainment Network.
Hype Network presents.
Welcome to your unfiltered Tagalog Wrestling Podcast. This is the FTG Show Podcast.
Ayun, okay na. Okay na. So, it's Friday. Wow, ang aga. And you know what that means. Welcome to your Unfiltered Tagalog Wrestling Podcast. And this is the MTG Show Podcast, a wrestling podcast. Aha, ayun. So, thank you for listening on this episode. So, also, ito rin yung first episode ko with a new mic. So, that's a nice touch for our 2022. Definitely a good touch for this year's 2022. And now, I'm back after almost 2 weeks. Ito sa mga makikinig ditong episode na to. So, if you wonder kung bakit ganito ang ating setup, kasi ganito eh. Saturday, January 7. I think it's 7 nga. Ba? 7 or 8? I think it's Friday. Today. Hindi. Nag-record kasi ako January 3. Manila time. January 4. Ganun. And then, sasapaw na siya ng Wrestle Kingdom. Night 1. And, di naman natin siya itatakal today though. Pero ang ating itatackle today is WWE Day1. And also, yung MWF Medyo Noche. And mamaya natin pag-uusapan, syempre, Medyo Noche. And bakit natin to in advance? Kasi sa January 7, wala akong recording. Wala akong everything. Instead, I'm going to drop the episode on Friday. I think it's January 7 or 8. Kung yung tatapat. Basta Friday yon. And I wish you guys na makikinig kayo dito sa episode na to. Alright. Today is January. Wow. Today, ito bigyan ko kayo ng ideya. Before we start this week's episode, I want to give a shout out to everyone who is listening, rating this podcast almost every week. Wow. And that's a pretty good job in behalf of myself. And actually, sana naman rate nyo naman tong podcast every week is we're trying to give wrestling content. Wala lang tayo ng 2 weeks, but it doesn't mean na tayo mawawala rin sa podcast. No, it's not the case anymore. But, we're here. We're here. I'm back. And I'm here to stay. Alright? So, let's start the programming. On this week's pod again, we're going to talk about Day 1 and that MWF event that happened last December 30, which is Medyo Noche, pay-per-view or show na pinalabas nila of course sa Facebook or whatever common social media platform that they used on that pay-per-view event. So before we start this episode, again, I want to invite you guys. Tapos na nga ang 1-1 since New Year yun. And I want you guys to use my link for Lazada and of course on Shopee. That's podlink.co/6gs on Lazada and on Shopee podlink.co/phx. And now let's start the programming. So let's start with day one. So we got a lot of things that we need to discuss on today's review. Number one, pay-per-views is dead. Alright? Wala nang sense. Wala nang sense. Wala na rin pay-per-views in WWE. Instead, WWE is calling their pay-per-views premium live event or events. Wala na, hindi na nila gagamitin yung term na pay-per-view kasi we don't pay for pay-per-view. Instead, kasama na lang siya sa bundle. If you're going to subscribe to WWE Network or Peacock in the US, hindi na siya yung case anymore. It's not the case. Hindi na natin binabayaran per view. Instead, we're paying a month to watch or nagbabayad tayo ng isang event kada isang buwan for the pay-per-view or for the event. And sa case na yun, medyo may sense siya for me. Kasi, like what I said, hindi na tayo nagbabayad for pay. Hindi tayo nagbabayad for the show. No? Ang binabayaran na natin is the content plus bonus na lang yung show. Diba? Yun ang scenario natin ngayon. So that's why it makes sense and may sense naman talaga siya for me. Alright? So that's why we got the PLE or Premium Live Events na yun na yung ginagamit nila moving forward starting from today's day 1. Sige. Speaking of day 1, we're going to talk about the most important thing that you need to know about today's day 1 on the pay-per-view. So, an hour before day 1, WWE announced that Roman Reigns is a COVID positive. So, kailangan niya mag-pull out on the pay-per-view, hindi vacant ang title. In that case, si Brock Lesnar ay nag-step up and nag-challenge for the WWE Championship and eventually won. Speaking of one, sige na, let's start with the Brock Lesnar match. So it's a fatal 5-way match. Seth Rollins versus Big E, the champion, versus Kevin Owens versus Bobby Lashley versus Brock Lesnar. The case here is si Brock ay nag-walk out as your WWE champion. Yun ang main story. Everything, lahat na nakikita nyo ngayon, it's all about Brock. And wow, sobrang last minute nun for me. It makes sense and the story between Brock and Roman na maybe mag-lead sa isang title dash for WrestleMania. However, like what I said in multiple forums, however, there's two fates for Brock's WWE title. Hindi pa nagro-raw, pero di pa natin nakikita kung what's the future of the motherfucking title. Maybe maraming possible happenings. Number one, Lashley can challenge Brock for the WWE title at the Royal Rumble. Or maybe they're going to say Brock versus Lashley for the WWE title at WrestleMania Night 1. And eventually, gagawin nga nila yung title versus title at WrestleMania Night 2 versus Roman Reigns. And if that's the case, Roman Reigns will obviously won the title versus title match at WrestleMania. Question, naburo na ba si Big E? O na-bury na ba si Big E? The simplest answer that we need to give to all of you guys as of today is no. Hindi buried si Big E. Ha? Hindi po siya naburo, hindi po siya napunta sa kangkungan, kundi nababala ng konti ang kanyang status. It doesn't mean na siya ay buried. Ha? Hindi siya na-bury. Ha? Tandaan nyo lagi yan. That's the most important stuff that we need or you guys need to know about the happenings on day 1. And importante rin to kasi ang iisipin kasi ng fans, si Brock is always be the same Brock that we got few months, years back. Na ayan, suplex repeat, suplex repeat, suplex repeat, suplex repeat, suplex repeat. The guy, no, is so different now. And Roman is so different now. Definitely, we're going to get a better good match for Brock and Roman if mangyayari man yung title match nila for WrestleMania. But regardless, let's talk about the Fatal 5-Way match. I love the Fatal 5-Way match. Sobrang linis para sa akin nung lahat ng scenarios na nangyari. Halos, nag-shine dito si Lashley aside from Brock. Sobrang nag-shine si Lashley because of, yung sobrang ganda ng performance niya for me. And Big E, props to Big E pa din because he gave a solid run for the WWE Championship. Wala dapat ikahiya dito si Big E because Big E did a pretty good job holding up the WWE Championship on the era since July. Oo, sobrang solid nun. So, July o September, whatever. Basta sobrang solid na to eh. Wala akong ibang masabi. Kundi, thank you. Thank you, Big E. Because he gave us a solid title run. Wala naman eh. Wala tayong dapat ikahiya dito. Because sobrang solid nun eh. Wala tayong regards or regret na binigay natin kay Big E yung championship. No. Because we love Big E. Big E is a marketable guy. However, to pull the trigger for a Brock Lashley and eventually the night 2 Brock versus Roman, we have to deal with this. Ganun eh. Ganun yung lumalabas eh. Diba? Ganun lang yun. Sige, Vince, okay, we're going to give you night 1 versus Lashley and then night 2 versus Brock or Roman. Whoever wins. Ang hirap ah. Ganun din naman. Roman will always win. Kasi Roman always wins. And if that's the case, okay, let's accept the reality. Okay, I'm fine with that. Ayos naman sa akin eh. Kaya lang, nakakabigla. At the same time, sobrang lungkot ko kay Big E. I feel bad for Big E because he had to deal with this and he had to lose the title too early. Sobrang aga nun. Kasi di pa natin nakikita talaga yung potential ni Big E as WWE Champion. Siyempre, kahit ako, gusto ko din talaga makita. Kaya sobrang nalulungkot ako. And also, if you notice, Brock Lesnar is a New Day killer. I don't know if that's a pro or con for me, but I love how they're building up Brock Lesnar for a better story. or for a better feud versus Roman and eventually Lashley for the program at the Royal Rumble or WrestleMania. So that's a good thing. That's a good thing for me. And then next match of the card. So we got Becky Lynch versus Liv Morgan for the Raw Women's title. I can say that this is the best match ni Liv ever in her career. Sobrang solid nito. Kaya lang, I can say is sobrang basura ng ending. Like what I said earlier in the last year, na it's almost the same. We love Liv. We love how they build up the feud. I love what the hell they're doing. But eventually, ganun to rin ang mangyayari because uh, they're saving up Liv for later date or either maybe Liv winning the Royal Rumble for 2022. Eventually, possible nga yung mangyari. Diba? And di na rin ako magugulat if that stuff is going to happen. But for then, ito ulit. Question number 2. People, is Liv Morgan buried? Guys, huwag naman puro buro. Ayaw nyo ba na, isi-save lang for a later date? Ganun ba? Ganun ba ang trato nyo sa talent? Matatalo na ng 2-3 laban. Puro agad. Buried agad. It's not the case. Naglalaylo lang yan. Eventually, she will get a revenge or eventually, makukuha niya rin yung gusto niya. Diba? Ganun lagi naman sa WWE. Kung akong pag-uusapan, kung ang tatanungin nyo, that's the case. Diba? It makes sense. Everything makes sense in WWE. In several ways. Hindi ko sinasabing lahat may sense lang. Kasi minsan may mga booking din talaga sila ng walang sense. But guys, I swear, if you want, sobrang solid ito. That is one of the best matches of the night and eventually one of the best matches you've ever. And then we got the Miz versus Edge in a match, one-on-one. Ito yung nag-return din si Beth Phoenix. And eventually, medyo, it's a love or hate for me. Ito, love or hate. Love, cause pahaba pa yung feud since bago lang naman to eventually until WrestleMania, no? Okay na yun. Hate. Alam mo yung ayaw ko dito? Sobrang pangit ng sundot nila kay Beth dito. Parang, ayan, Beth, pasok ka na lang. Bahala ka na sa buhay mo. Parang ganun ang pasok ni Beth Phoenix dito. However, on the way how they book Beth Phoenix, that's a pretty good touch. Sobrang ganda nun for me. However, ayan na naman tayo eh. However, we might get Beth versus Maryse anytime, no? Maganda yon. And eventually, makakuha rin tayo ng isa pang Miz versus Edge. But this time with a clear winner or baka nga ipasok yan sa Elimination Chamber, screw up or mag-screw. And then we got another match at WrestleMania but this time tag team. Mixed tag. And di ako magko-complain. Because they can build a better match or a good match. Alright? And then we got our WWE Raw Tag Team title match between New Day. Between RK Bro and the eventual winners of the RK Bro tournament, the Street Profits. The match is wala. Sobrang dull. I'm not saying it's bad. So, kaya lang sobrang dull niya for me. and parang unnecessary match for the card. Wala, sobrang ano na 'to, same do'n sa susunod nating match na pag-uusapan. Sobrang unnecessary nito for me na they book the match and then eventually they're going to, something like that. And I'm kinda disappointed on the part na lumabas dito yung Migos. So, what the fuck is Migos doing? Wala rin naman mangyayari during the match if o if lalabas diyan ang Migos. May ginawa ba ang Migos? Wala. I don't know what's wrong with these guys. And I don't know what's wrong with WWE booking this shit. Because it doesn't make sense. O wala ring sense at all. Diba? And eventually nga, napakatangi. Migos, okay ako sa trato na lang. Kaya lang, medyo na-upset ako on the fact that we have to put them on the stupid card. I'm not saying it's bad though, but regardless, mas maganda sana ako sa profits nilagay yung Migos eh. Mas maganda sana ang combination yan. Hip-hop to hip-hop. Ano? Ayun, okay na. And then we got Madcap Moss versus Drew McIntyre in a tawag dito. In the one-on-one match. Bibigyan ko ba to ng commentary? Bibigyan ko ba to? Ang inang. Bibigyan ko pa to? Kasi seryoso ako eh. Kasi itong match na to, it's just a Drew match on a pay-per-view na random and para lang magka pay-per-view time si Madcap. At sobrang nagulantang ako na, ha? We're going to get this on pay-per-view? Like, what the hell? Gago ba kayo? Seriously, I'm okay with Madcap's performance on this one. Kaya lang, there's a problem. Parang wala eh. Hindi naman necessary na they doesn't need to put this long match on pay-per-view because it's a motherfucking pay-per-view. We don't need that motherfucking guy on the pay-per-view. I don't say na, ayan putang ina mo, I don't need you for that pay-per-view. No. Sayang oras lang to. Dude, don't waste your time or your card or your time. Basta yun. Wag niyong sasayangin ng oras o yung time nyo, yung graphics nyo, cards nyo, just for that trash story. Right? And then eventually our my favorite matches of the week. So we got the SmackDown Tag Team titles. It's the Usos versus the New Day. No title change whatsoever. But we got one of the best New Day versus Usos match on their feud history. Sobra solid ito. I swear one of the best matches of that card. And di ko ni-regret yun. So, yan. And then, also, another story from day 1 is na injured si Rich Holland during the kickoff match between Sheamus and Rich Holland and versus Cesaro and Ricochet. Konti pa lang yung time for that match and duguan yung ilong ni sino nga to? Ni Rich Holland. Dugo yung ilong niya. And wala eh. Sobrang nabasag yung ilong niya. I wish him na makapag-recover siya. And sana asahan natin sa susunod na pagkakataon na it's gonna be a good one. Good run for Rich Holland. Anyways, yun lang. Yun lang ang aking rating for WWE Day 1. Ang aking review ito na. And then, we got our scores. So that SmackDown Tag Team titles is 2. The Madcap versus Drew is 2. The SD Women Since the tag team titles is 4, alright? 4, sorry, clarify natin. So it's 4, and then the Madcap and Drew, it's 2. The Raw tag is 3. The Raw Miz versus Edge match is 3. Same with the Raw Women's title, Bet, Bet Becky versus Liv, it's 3. And then the Fatal 5-way match, it's 5. Alright? And then my match of the week on this pay-per-view, I can say is the SmackDown Tag Titles because that's a good stuff. Yun lang for me. And for now, we're going to take a commercial break. Our first break here on our first podcast in the new year 2022. So when we come back, we are going to do our MWF Medyo Mainit, Medyo Noche episode review. We're not going to do scoring system on this one for now. But I hope na, ayan, sige na. Mamaya natin explain. So for now, let's check our other ka-podcast here on Pipe Network.
Gusto niya bang malaman kung paano kami nakikipag-collab sa mga brands in the MT Show podcast? We use Podmetrics, the easiest way to monetize your podcast. If meron kang podcast, sign up now at podmetrics.co and use my code DMTGShowPod to get full control on how you monetize your show regarding of its size. Again, sign up now at podmetrics.co and use my code DMTGShowPod. If you're an advertiser who wants to collab with us, head on over to advertiser.podmetrics.co and fill up the form. Again, Podmetrics, the easiest way to monetize your podcast.
You are listening to the MTG Show podcast, an unfiltered Tagalog wrestling podcast where they talk about anything and everything about professional wrestling. Speaking of professional, we are professionally going to segue to our own show, Rule 20 Podcast, where the only professional thing we do are done mostly off the record, behind the cam, and under the sheets. Again, that's Rule 20, available wherever you are listening to this right now. And now back to the podcast.
Ayun, we're back. Ang haba ng break. sorry guys. Sobrang haba ng break na yun. So I had to take a break. Then, alright. We're back on the MTG Show podcast, a wrestling podcast. And now, it's time for our MWF Medyo Noche review. Not really a review, alright? And before we continue, so if you're looking for a VPN or virtual private network, tama? Virtual private network or VPN, if we're looking for one VPN, so definitely NordVPN is for you guys. So if you want to subscribe to 2 years plus 4 months, it's for only $89. Please use my link on the description. It's podlink.co/BWN. Again, that's podlink.co/BWN. If you want to access the content on Disney Plus habang wala pang D+, or if you want to stream exclusive content na hindi mo na-access kung saan-saan here in the Philippines, kung ano mang platform yan. So you can use our NordVPN. So NordVPN ay nagpa-bypass yan. So if you want to subscribe, that there's a 2 years plus 4 months subscription, and you can use my link on the description, podlink.co/BWM. Ayan. So, we're going to do a real recap, alright? Yung small recap lang for MWF Medyo Noche event na nangyari last week, alright? Eto guys, linawin ko ha. MWF Medyo Noche is my first local event na na-feature natin here in the podcast. Alright. And also, Medyo Noche is my first local pay-per-view. Philippine pay-per-view or show na napanood ko ever. So, kung may mga mali ako or something like that, correct nyo na lang ako. Basta ganun, correct nyo na lang ako if may errors or may stuff na sa tingin ko mali. You can correct me. PM nyo lang ako, DM nyo lang ako sa Twitter or Instagram. Pag-uusapan natin yan. Alright, so let's start the match cards. So, konti lang to. It's a 4-match card. So, it's Rex Lawin, tas CJ Serafin in a good match. So, clarify natin, lahat ng matches na to is under Manila rules. So, nagkaroon na ng Manila rules dati and ayun, eventually nirevive nila ulit for this season ng MWF. So, the context on this thing, so may dalawa pong official ng MWF na umalis and then they got replaced, of course, by Sunny Go as the commissioner of, tama, commissioner ba? Oo, tama, of MWF, Booker, whatever, kung naman term yun. And then by Veronica as the acting parang CEO, something like that. So, sige, yung Manila rules is almost the same as the NXT UK British rules. Parang ganon. But there's a catch. So, if you got pinball win, yun ay valid for 1 point. Alright? And then, yung rope break is 1 point. And then, yung tap out submission or knockout is a automatic win for your team. So, meron ding pito and of course, whistle yun na kung English. And there's always a flashcards. I think it's red, yellow, and orange. Ewan ko, tama ako kung ano yung napanood ko. I'm not sure kung tama yung napanood ko sa event. So, it's red, yellow, and orange. It means in no particular order. I think it's a warning or a reset or disqualification. Yun ang kamahulugan ng flashcard. Again, correct nyo ako if mali ako. Yan lang. So, ito, let's start with Rex Lawin versus CJ Serafin. It's a pretty good match. Personally, in my opinion, I love kung ano yung binibuild nila since marami ding nawala sa MWF and they had to rebuild some stories and that stuff that we left behind na hindi na natin makukuha ulit because MWF decided to reset stuff since 2 years na yan. Since huli natin narinig or napanood ang mga shows ng MWF. So, it's a pretty good match. And nag-end siya sa submission, so it means automatic win yan. And then, sige, let's continue with Robin Zane versus Kyle Season. Personally, Kyle Season is one of my favorite guys on the roster for now. Because, wala eh, kahit bago siya, sobrang lakas ng dating niya sa akin eh. Sobrang lakas lang ang dating niya sa akin, I swear. And I wish magpatuloy lang siya sa gimmick na yan because I love his gimmick. Ayun, so yun lang. So, si Kylie Season, yung nanalo sa match. So, he got, I think it's 2-1? 3-1? No, 3-1 o 3-2? Ganun ang score. I'm not sure for that. And then, it's Jomar Liwanag versus Red Shirt in a match. So, it ends with knockout. So, they're building up new wrestlers. So, I love to see that, to be honest. Sobrang nagustuhan ko yung stuff na yun. And ako na wala ako for example, wala akong ideya sa stories na naiwan ng MWFU years back. Matutuwa naman ako kasi nakikita natin siya sa YouTube ng MWF. So it's a plus na meron silang YouTube channel and they did a summary on the characters of the new wrestlers, the newcomers. And for sure, if gusto niyo silang panoorin ulit, di ka maiiwan dito. Ganun yun eh. Ganun yung ginawa ng MWF dito. And that's a pretty good touch, to be honest. And then, sige. So it's the main event, Fabio Makisig versus Nigel San Jose. To be honest, I love, ito talaga, ito explain ko muna sa inyo kung ano yung totoong thoughts ko about Manila rules. Nung una, medyo na-confuse ako on kung paano nagra-run yung Manila rules. So, ano ba to? It's a mix ba ng scoring, ganun? So, scoring system, we get the something like that na parang determine na with 3 falls and then something like that. Medyo naguluhan ako. Aminin na natin. But eventually, during the second match, habang tumatagal yung event, nauunawaan ko na on how the rules work. I wish na I could watch the second show or the upcoming show ng MWF because that's a pretty good touch and a pretty good stuff. And syempre, sa mga talangka dyan, yung mga tanga na walang alam kundi mag-bash lang ng mag-bash, wala kayong pagtutunguhan sa mga ganyan. Please, guys. Support local din. Quality local. Huwag kayong susuporta basta-basta ng local. Lalo na yung, alam niyo na yan. Alright. Alam niyo na yan. Okay, so may ilan ba tayong bagay na we need to talk about on this week's spot. So number 1, I swear I love the match. The main event match between Anna Jay and Ty Conti versus Penelope Ford and the bunny is Ali in a street fight doon sa Rampage no nakaraan. So, that's a pretty good match. Sobrang solid eh. Sobrang hanga ako sa apat na wrestler na to eh, sa ano nila, larasismo nila. Ewan ko kung natap na nila to, yung Brit versus Thunder Rosa. But I don't think na natap nyo na yun for now. But eventually, pag tumatagal habang pinapanood ko ng tumatagal yung match, I think magsisync siya sa akin. And I think na tataas yung rating ko about that. No. That's a pretty good match. And then we got Ty Conti. Speaking of Ty Conti, so in-announce na din nila Sammy Guevara and Ty Conti na sila ay pagkasintahan. So, best wishes na lang. Best wishes for their relationship. And yun lang. Basically yun. And then, ano pa ba kailangan natin discuss? So, it's basically yun lang eh. Wala na. We don't need to talk about lot of stuff on this week's pod. Babawi tayo next week. For now kasi, ganito. Nag-record ako ng Monday. And I had to pre-record this episode on Monday because Wednesday, wala ako dito sa studio. Remember that. And Friday or Saturday, ikakasal yung kapatid ko. Best wishes nga pala sa kapatid ko and sa kanyang asawa, soon to be wife, husband and wife sa kapatid ko. So, good luck. Sana maganda yung buhay niyo. Sana magumanda yung samahan niyo, of course. And sana makapag-Loming Batangas ako. And yun na aking thoughts for this week's podcast. Sige, let's do our picks of the week. So let's start with the match of the week. Match of the week is the Rampage. Ano ba to? Rampage New Year's Smash match between Ty Conti and Anna Jay versus Penelope Ford and syempre si The Bunny, si Ali. That's a pretty good match. Sobrang solid ito. One of the best matches in AEW Women's Division. Madami tayo pa tayong dapat abangan on the women's side of things. And then, like what I said, the Woman of the Week is obviously Liv Morgan. So, despite Liv losing the match, para sa akin, sobrang solid ng performance ni Liv on this week's Day1. Sobrang solid nun, I swear. And then the superstar of the week is none other than Brock Lesnar. Because Brock did a pretty good job on his match at Day1. So yeah, yun lang. Yun lang basically for this week's podcast. Follow the podcast on all of the social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, and on TikTok at the MTG Show Pod. You can listen to this podcast every Fridays on your favorite podcast platforms and on the podcast app. And please rate the podcast, of course, 5 stars on Spotify and other podcast platform. It's at Apple Podcast though. And then, ayun, if you want to listen to our catalog here on Pipe Network, please listen to our catalog, of course, on pipenetwork.co for more Pipe Network shows. And, of course, follow Pipe Network on social media at Pipe Network. And I want to give a shout out to our new members of the Pipe Network. So, ito yung Quentox ni Mark at saka yung yung Rule 20 podcast na sobrang daming followers and listeners, of course, ni Patrick. Nakapanakinig ko lang na kanyang isang episode. It's a pretty good stuff na dapat yung hindi ma-miss here on the network. So marami tayo dito sa network and marami pa tayong dapat abangan. Lalo't malapit na rin ang aking anniversary here in the Pipe Network. And also, of course, please support all of the Pipe Network shows, all the new. And follow the podcast on follow nyo na lang ako at on Twitter and IG at AG Penera on both Twitter and Instagram. And that's pretty much it for our first episode of the new year 2022. Stay safe, stay reso, please vaccine yourselves or boost yourselves. And malapit na ang May. Baka naman. Please vote for the most deserving candidate for the next 6 years. Para sa atin to. Hindi lang to para sa ninuno kahit sino. Please vote for the most deserving person who is running right now. And sige na. See you on the next episode. Next week's episode, we're going to talk about everything New Year plus Wrestle Kingdom Night 1 to 3. Thank you. See you on the next episode.
Mainit na diskusyonan,
Masarap na kwentuhan,
malinamnam na usapan,
at nakakagising na balitaktakan.
parang kape lang. My name is Jeff.
And I'm Weya Angeline.
Join us in our conversations at Coffee na Lang Dear Podcast.
Did you know that podcasts are the new radio? You can listen to your favorite shows anytime, anywhere, on demand. Visit the Pilipinas Indie Podcast and Entertainment Network at pipenetwork.co to see our list of shows. And like us on Facebook to get updates on our latest episodes, events, promos, and freebies. The Pipe Network, taking podcasting to the next level.